The chicks have barely learned to fly when the sun sets. The days shorten, the temperature falls, food disappears. For the traveling birds, departure is now a question of survival. The tundra is emptied and once again becomes a kingdom of snow and ice. The barnacle geese leave Greenland, fly over Iceland, and take refuge in Scotland. The young ones complete their first migration, 2,000 kilometers for their first flight. Following their parents, they learn to recognize the route over land and sea. "20 flying hours non-stop until the next shore." The waders are the first migrating birds to leave before the arrival of bad weather. From the end of August, they fly night and day across the huge Siberian and Scandinavian forest and cross innumerable Norwegian fjords, flying thousands of kilometers to find themselves gathered together on the sandbanks of the North Sea, the Wadden Sea. There, they will rest for a few weeks, eating to restore their reserves of fat. Their weight will increase by a third. Without such energy, without fuel, they would be unable to continue any further and would be left behind. During the halts which scatter their journey, the waters will renew their feathers. They will lose their fine nuptial plumage in favor of a new, more discreet covering. The next stops, France, Spain, then Africa. Canada geese fly over North America, leaving behind the islands of ice on the far-flung reaches of Canada. They will spend the winter in the green valleys of the Mississippi. They will, however, regularly stop to eat, drink, sleep, and even clean up. Every day, they will spend several hours carefully grooming, one by one, each of their 20,000 feathers, smoothing them, tidying them, oiling them to make them waterproof. If they take so much care, it's because this is the guarantee of an efficient flight and, above all, of their survival. Plumage in a bad state means death. Once their toilet is finished, the Canada geese continue their flight. The large migrating birds which travel in groups fly in a regular formation, in V formation, in W formation, in straight or broken lines. It's not just to look beautiful in the sky, it's to save their energy. Just like racing cyclists, the birds position themselves one behind the other to be pulled along by the one in front. The leading bird is the one who makes the greatest effort, which is why it's regularly relayed by one of the other birds. Thus, they can fly for hours, days and nights without landing, neither drinking nor eating. Like the sailor and the aviator, migrating birds are very sensitive to the weather. As soon as a contrary wind comes up, they land so not to be blown backwards. Canada geese fly at 70 kilometers an hour. Facing a wind of 80 kilometers an hour, they'll fall back. They're not migrating in order to go backwards. It's best to wait for better atmospheric conditions to improve. There's a golden rule during the flight south, not to be caught up by bad weather. The early arrival of snow may catch stragglers unaware. For the geese, to find food in such conditions becomes mission impossible. A few blades of grass won't be enough. When they reach the end of their journey, they'll have to feed for 7 or 8 hours a day. In Alaska, the waders continue their voyage towards the tropics. After having isolated themselves during the summer to raise their chicks quietly, they come together in compact masses. No more chicks, no more need for territory. They have only one objective, to reach the tropics safe and sound. In order to avoid their main enemy, the falcon, which follows them throughout their trip, their tactic is to blend into the mass. This is the technique used by fish schools. The cohesion and density of the group is their best chance of safety in the event of aerial attack. Each day, they practice moving together as one. The sandhill cranes had already gathered in spring on a tributary of the Missouri before scattering throughout the vastness of the Arctic tundra. In autumn, the families reunite in the same place before continuing their journey south. Traditional resting places lie along the migratory route. They always pass by the same places on the same dates, but only if the climate and man allow them to do so. Navigating by the stars, most birds migrate by night. In October, flights of gray-lag geese announce the coming cold. They make a brief stopover in France before continuing their journey towards their winter quarters in Spain. These are the ancestors of our domestic geese. However, wild geese have retained all their strength and endurance. Every year they cover thousands of kilometers in a few days. Until the Middle Ages, Eurasian cranes were to be found all over Europe. Hunted to furnish princely tables, they disappeared and can now only be found in Eastern Europe and Scandinavia. In 1974, dams were built in the French region of Champagne to regulate the flooding of the Seine along the crane's traditional routes. they immediately took advantage of them to rest and spend a few days there before departing for the south. Since then, more and more of them stopped there every year. Some even spend the winter there, no longer bothering to migrate to Spain. After 5 centuries of absence, the Eurasian crane has finally returned to France. The flight path taken by the cranes is precise, an aerial corridor cutting Europe in half from Germany to Spain that they rarely leave. If they want, the cranes can cross France in a single night. For thousands of years, their calls have signaled their passage. Flying over the Pyrenean passes, a trap can cut short the wood pigeon's journey. Guns raising barriers of fire are to be feared even more. 1 pigeon out of 3 will never see Spain or its Scandinavian birthplace again. If so many winged travelers have learned to fear man, others know how to benefit from his galloping expansion. Seagulls proliferate on garbage dumps. White storks also. Some content themselves with feeding on waste and no longer need to travel the African savanna. Storks travel on solar energy. If there's no sun, they're grounded and have to wait for good weather to return. By heating the earth, the sun creates hot air bubbles which rise up in the sky. The stork uses these as a lift. They can effortlessly rise 1,000 to 2,000 meters and glide until the next lift. The journey is slow. He flies for almost 2 months without food. For, beyond the desert, the tropics lie in wait with their promises. Finally, it's the end of the journey. The beaches of the Banc d'Arguin on the Mauritanian coast. This is where all the waders converge from the north, like a gigantic funnel stretching from Canada to Siberia. They've all arrived. The sandpipers, curlews, plovers, godwits, long-billed plovers, turnstones. They travel together from Northern Europe. Here, there are no problems with neighbors. Now it's united we stand. They tighten the ranks. It's on the Banc d'Arguin that the waders first meet the largest birds in Africa, white pelicans. They also meet the greater flamingos, which live there all year round. Day and night are no longer important. The waders will live through the winter with the rhythm of the tides. At high tide, there's only one thing to do. Wait until the sea goes out. Soon the feast will begin. They're all there, the thousands of birds that come from the far north, for the biggest banquet ever seen. Thousands of acres of damp sand, endless mudflats teeming with food. The area is so rich, they can all live in harmony. No competition here. There's enough to eat for all, and for all tastes. Whether legs or beaks are short or long, whether they prefer to stalk or to forage, whether they seek worms, crabs, or the remains of fish, all appetites will be satisfied. The gray plover hunts by stalking. Even crabs will be eaten. This is the curlew's specialty. He swallows them whole, snappers and all. The red godwit doesn't have the plover's patience. It searches for worms in the depth of their holes in the mud and pulls them out with a rapid twist of the beak. White pelicans fly all over West Africa, looking for water holes with enough fish to satisfy their enormous appetites. The huge marshes in the Senegal Delta offer them the perspective of some good fishing trips. Tropical rain has swollen the rivers and lakes. Water brings on an explosion of life. For African birds and those from afar, this is paradise. Pelicans always do everything together. For fishing, they circle around schools of fish and all dive in at the same time. Their pouches, wide open, form a huge living fishing net. The Gargany teals and the black-winged stilts have flown in a single flight from their last resting place in southern Europe to find bed and breakfast in Senegal. The table is so richly furnished that it will keep the African ducks and those that have traveled to join them satisfied for the winter. The white-faced whistling ducks cluster together. The more there are of them, the more will watch, and their vigilance will be heightened. No one pays attention to the warthog. But it's better to be wary of the jackal. The turtle doves leave Europe to spend the winter in southern Sahara. They feed on seeds from the savanna and glean the millet fields after the harvest. The riches of Africa seem infinite for those who know how to catch them. The myriad of insects that appear after the rains will feed all the European swallows for the next 6 months. The pelicans fly deeper into the heart of Africa. Ten 10,000 species of birds share the world. You can still find in East Africa some of the most amazing specimens that used to populate the African continent. Due to human activity, wildlife habitat is continually shrinking. As the season progresses, the drought extends. Life is then concentrated around the last waterholes. The plover imitates the sound of rain in order to deceive and bring out worms. The largest mammals come to drink with the birds. Lesser flamingos have flown down from the Rift Valley to meet on the banks of Lake Bogoria in Kenya. Flamingos filter the water with their beaks, in which lamina retain the microorganisms which nourish them. Whales use the same technique. Water draws all these birds together, but therein also lies the danger. The drought has overheated the water in the lake, and deadly bacteria proliferate. The poisoned flamingos die slowly but surely, victims of botulism. "150 years ago in India, the Maharaja of Bharatpur, a passionate hunter, understood how much birds love water. He had dikes and dams built at the confluence of two rivers to flood a huge plain. Attracted by this aquatic paradise, migrating birds soon arrived in vast numbers and fell into the trap, as the hunting bags of the period reveal. 20th December 1891, 2,568 birds killed. 14th of January 1892, 4,273 birds killed. 2nd of February 1893, 3,443 birds killed. A century later, Bharatpur is protected. Hunting is prohibited. The site has become a sanctuary where, in winter and in summer, a multitude of sedentary and migrating birds live together. Tropical marshes are rich in plants and animals that are unique in the world. But for the immediate use of man, they're useless. The only good marsh is a drained marsh, turned into wheat fields, rice fields, or dumps. Bird paradises disappear one after the other, in India as elsewhere. Bar-headed geese come from far away to profit from the treasures of Bharatpur. Twice a year they fly over the Himalayas. Where would they spend the winter if Bharatpur disappeared? And those who live there all year long? Is this already the vision of paradise lost? Sarah's cranes are the first to notice the coming of a new spring. The season of love is here again. It's time for the traveling birds to leave the Maharaja's paradise, to take the route far north to return to their birthplace. For how much longer will they keep their promise to return?